Welcome back, guys. I'm Carla Gallagher, the Metabolic Alchemist, and today's topic is a touchy one. I know, but I want to tell you a story. When Maddie was about 2 years old, Maddie is my daughter, she's now 16, she was chronically constipated. I don't know if any mums out there have ever experienced constipation in young children. And I don't mean it was an odd, difficult day. I mean, we would spend hours every day on the toilet reading books, doing what I call the poo poo massage on her stomach, rubbing her tummy, just trying to help her go. And it was really taxing on her, obviously, as a 2 year old, and me as a parent knowing, why is she not going to the toilet? Now, I was already a health conscious mum back then. I was naturopath. Obviously, I made everything from scratch. We were eating whole grains, fermented breads like sourdough. This wasn't like a household full of white bread and chicken nuggets. By all conventional standards, I thought we were doing the right thing, eating healthy, but something wasn't right. And I knew, because she was in discomfort, that I was in trouble. It wasn't until I came across a piece of work by a doctor called Alessio Fasano, and he was doing a piece of research out of Massachusetts General in the US. And he had discovered something really extraordinary about how gluten interacts with the human gut. And that's when all the pieces starting to fall together for me. And it really supported the paleo approach. I dove deep into paleo as a concept, and it was really all spurred by his research and also Madison's constipation. God, I hope Madison's not listening to this. Anyway, I removed gluten from our diet, and Maddie's sluggish bowels, guess what? They just started to work again. Eh, she was going every single day. No medicines, no supplements, nothing was prescribed, no hospital procedures. No, it was just a change in the one thing that we were doing, what we were eating. And that experience, watching my own daughter's body respond to just one dietary change, is really what set me on a path that I've never really come back from. It's a path that has since shaped how I work with every single woman that I work with who comes into my programs. And here's what I want to talk to you about today. This isn't just about celiac disease. This isn't just about bloating or digestive discomfort. And what I've learned over the last 15 plus years, both clinically and personally, is that gluten is one of the most insidious triggers hiding in plain sight. And the gluten that we're eating today, it's not the same gluten our grandparents were eating. Let's start with what actually changed, because this is where it gets really interesting. When people hear me say avoid gluten, I know what some of you guys are thinking. You're thinking humans have been eating bread for thousands and thousands of years. My nonna ate the same bread, and she lived to 93. Awesome, nonna. That is amazing, actually. And here's the thing, you're right, but you also might not be, because do we actually know what was going on inside our grandparents or their parents' guts? Do we know if our great grandmothers had inflammation, joint pain that lined up with brain fog they call getting old, maybe skin conditions they never connected to food? We don't really. We don't actually have the case files of our grandparents' health logs. We didn't have the testing. We didn't have the research. We didn't even have the language for it back then. What we do know, and this is what I can speak to clinically, is that over the last couple of decades, something has shifted. Gluten intolerance is increasing. Autoimmune conditions are increasing. Inflammatory bowel conditions are increasing. And we have to ask why. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I have all the answers. I actually don't. Nobody does yet. But what I can tell you is that science is showing us that what I'm seeing in my practice every day correlates too strong to ignore. And part of that story is about wheat itself. Modern bread wheat, the stuff that goes into the supermarket loaves, your wraps, your pasta, your cereals, it's called a hexaploid species. Now, that has 6 sets of chromosomes. Ancient wheat varieties are diploid, that's 2 sets, tetraploid, that's 4 sets. Over thousands of years, wheat has been selectively bred and hybridized. Not genetically modified. I want to be clear about that, like some of our species of food, but aggressively crossbred to produce higher yields, faster harvests, and stronger, more elastic gluten for industrial baking. Now, research out of Italy showed us that breeding programs across the 20th century increased gluten strength by over 32%. Not necessarily more gluten, but stronger, tougher gluten proteins. Wheat has been optimized for the food industry, basically, and whether our guts can handle that optimized version or not, it's still up for question. And increasingly, the research is suggesting that the answer to that is no. And it's not just gluten. Modern wheat contains other proteins called amylase or trypsin inhibitors, ATIs for short. And for most people, most of you have not ever heard of them, they're not gluten. But research has shown that independently, they can also trigger your innate immune system, your body's first line of defense, causing inflammation, even in people who don't react to gluten itself. So whether I say it's the whole package of modern wheat that concerns me or not, it's not just one protein. This is what I mean. The wheat we are eating today is a cocktail of inflammatory proteins, and gluten is just the one that we've given it a name to. But here's what I want to be honest about. We need more research. Our lives and our health depend on the men and women in science and in clinical practice continuing to do the work. What I can share with you is that research that we have right now, what it's pointing to, and what I've seen in my own eyes over the last 15 or so years in clinical practice. And that's what this episode is all about. Welcome to the Gluten Podcast. Okay. Whew. There's one thing I need to add to this whole hybridization point, and that is that G word. Yep, glyphosate. If it's not already hybridized, then we add this chemical layer because it's not just about the wheat, it's about what we spray on it. Glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, has been registered for use in Australia for over 40 years, and it's not just used to kill weeds. Farmers spray it directly onto our wheat crops right before harvest in a practice called pre-harvest desiccation. Now, it forces the crop to evenly dry out so that it can be faster harvested and in a more uniform manner. And the problem is, well, when you spray a chemical on a crop days before the harvest, that chemical is still in the grain. When it's collected, it's still in the grain. There's no time for that to be broken down. It goes straight into processing, into our flours, into your bread. And here's where it gets really interesting. Research is showing that glyphosate disrupts the microbiome. It kills beneficial bacteria. Oh, great. It kills weeds, but it also kills our own bacteria. Shit. I don't want Roundup Ready in my gut. It interferes with this pathway called shikimate. Now, that sounds like a mushroom, doesn't it? But anyway, this pathway is essential for our bacterial survival. So your gut bugs need this pathway that glyphosate goes and attacks. So what I want you to think about for a moment is when someone goes gluten-free and suddenly feels better, less bloating, more energy, clearer skin, fewer headaches, are they responding to the removal of gluten? Or are they also, without realizing it, dramatically reducing their chemical exposure to glyphosate? I challenge that it's both. But the fact that we're not even having this conversation is an actual problem. Now, I want to be balanced about this. The EU actually renewed glyphosate's approval for another 10 years back in 2023. And the regulatory bodies there concluded that it met their safety criteria also. Now, here's something interesting. There is some pushback. Individual countries within EU are raising their voices. Luxembourg has banned it outright. The Czech Republic has also banned its specific use in the pre-harvest desiccant process. The Netherlands have also banned it in commercial use. And even Kellogg's, dare I say that word, the cereal company, announced that they'd phase out wheat treated with glyphosate as a drying agent also. Shock horror. Don't go out and buy Kellogg's, please, just because they're going to phase out glyphosate. The point is, meanwhile, in Australia, glyphosate has been registered for over 40 years, and there is over 500 glyphosate products on our register. And there's been no restriction on its use in pre-harvest at all. I'm not telling you that glyphosate is definitively causing your symptoms. What I'm telling you is that there is a connection. It is evolving, and the science is catching up, and we are going to get you. We're going to find out, and consumers deserve to know what is being sprayed on our food and what it's doing to our health. We have the power, guys, and I want you to know the science. Now, let's talk about what it does to the inside of your body when you eat gluten, because this is the piece of science that's changed everything for me. Now, Dr. Alessio Fasano, who I mentioned at the top of this episode, is a pediatric gastroenterologist, and his research really was pioneering the discovery of this protein called zonulin. Now, it's not a planet from outer space. Zonulin is essentially a gatekeeper of your gut lining. It controls tight junctions. These tiny lines in your intestinal wall, these junctions are supposed to open and close selectively, letting nutrients into our bloodstream and keeping everything else out. When zonulin is released, it signals those tight junctions to open. And when they open up too much or for too long or too often, you get what is known as increased intestinal permeability, or what most people call it is leaky gut. Now, here's the finding that should stop you right in your tracks. Fasano's research showed that gliadin, the protein inside of gluten, triggers zonulin release. Now, it triggers it in everybody, not just people with celiac disease, not just people with a gluten sensitivity. Every single person reacts to this gliadin with a release of zonulin. In non-celiac individuals, that response is pretty transient. It's a limited short-term opening the gut can in fact, recover from. But in people with celiac disease or gluten predisposition or sensitivity, that response is sustained and it can be very severe. The gut lining essentially stays open. Large undigested food, proteins, bacterial fragments, pathogens, toxins, it all crosses into that bloodstream where they were never supposed to be. And what happens? Well, your body does what every good body should do. It mounts an immune attack. Your immune system, doing exactly what it's designed to do, launches this attack on these foreign particles that are now in your bloodstream. How fascinating. What's even more fascinating is that Fasano's research suggests that essentially the body misinterprets gluten as a pathogen, as if it was, harmful. Your immune system doesn't see it as bread, it actually sees it as a threat. And the two most powerful triggers for zonulin release that has been identified, bacterial overgrowth like SIBO and gluten. So if somebody has a compromised gut and it's eating gluten daily, you're getting a direct hit from both directions. And here's something that most people don't know. Zonulin doesn't have a funny name. It doesn't just open your gut. It also affects your blood-brain barrier. The same protein that's loosening those tight junctions in your intestinal wall can also be loosening that barrier that protects your brain. So when women tell me that their brain fog lifted when they stopped eating gluten, or that their migraines had stopped for, the last 20 years since they stopped gluten, That's a physiological reason for that. It's not just in their head. No, it's actually, well, technically it is, but it's not the way that you have been told. Now, Fasano's work hasn't gone unchallenged, and I want to be transparent about that because I think it's important. Some researchers have questioned whether the blood tests he used to measure zonulin are accurate enough to be used as a standalone diagnostic tool. And that's a fair challenge, and it's one that the scientific community is going to have to work through. But here's what the research doesn't dispute. The research consistently shows that gliadin, the protein in gluten, increases intestinal permeability. That's been replicated independently by multiple research teams all around the world. A 2020 study published in Nature Communication, one of the most prestigious scientific journals, showed that zonulin could actually be used to predict the transition from silent autoimmunity to inflammatory arthritis, and that blocking the zonulin pathway with a drug prevents arthritis from developing. And guess what? There is a drug in phase 3 clinical trials that was specifically designed to block zonulin pathways. So pharmaceutical companies don't just invest that kind of money into a mechanism that doesn't hold up. The science isn't finished. It never is. But the direction is clear. And if you want to understand the scale of what we're dealing with in Australia and New Zealand, Crohn's disease, which is directly linked to intestinal permeability and immune dysfunction, is more common than ulcerative colitis in Australian studies. The incidences of autoimmune diseases globally have been rising for 30 plus years, and the research is increasingly pointing to the same mechanism: an environmental trigger and a loss of intestinal barrier function. And gluten is sitting right in the middle of those. Now, I want to bring out of the lab and into real life because I see this every single day in my practice. And before I go on, I want to say something about this. For years, women who have reacted to gluten but didn't have celiac disease were told it was all in their heads. They were pretty much dismissed. They were mocked. But you're not celiac, so you're fine. They even got the test done. You can eat gluten. It's fine. Don't worry about that gut pain that you're having because you're not a celiac. So just keep eating it. It's good for you. Well, let me just tell you, the research now shows that people with non-celiac gluten sensitivity have measurably increased intestinal permeability compared to healthy controls. So guess what? It's not imaginary that gut pain after you eat gluten. It's not a trend. It's not a fad. And guess what? It's about time we start treating it the same. When women come to me, I don't just remove gluten. I remove all grains. Gluten, oats, quinoa, everything, rice, the lot. I remove dairy also, and we go paleo. And there's a reason for this. It's the same approach I used with Maddie. Yep, when she was 2 years old. We strip it all the way back, let the body heal, and then only then do we start to see what's actually driving the real problem. Because here's the thing, most people don't realize when you eat gluten and dairy and oats and rice and grains every single day, your symptoms get masked. You can't tell what's causing what. It is a minefield. Is it the gluten? Is it the dairy? Is it the oats? Is it perimenopause? Is it just life? Am I getting old? Guess what? It could be all of them. You generally don't know, and neither does your doctor, because everything is layered on top of everything else. So we need to clear the deck. We need to get clean. We need to go to rehab, gut rehab. And what that okay, that's bad. But what happens when we do this next is not a coincidence. A significant number, I would say every single woman I see has a pretty much profound response after just a couple of weeks. Women who have had chronic migraines for decades, all of a sudden stop having them. Joint pain, back pain, they've been living with for years, gone. Maybe skin issues, rosacea, cleared up. Brain fog, energy lifts, bloating disappears. These aren't just isolated cases. This is a pattern I see over and over and over again. And then comes the really interesting part. As we progress through this program together and the body has time to heal, we start to have the occasional reintroduction. There might be a pizza event that pops up. And then it becomes crystal clear because when you've been clean for a few weeks, does sound like rehab, doesn't it? And you have that chance exposure to gluten or dairy or oats or whatever, or that one serve of ice cream that you said that you just want to have a taste of, your body is going to tell you exactly how it feels about that food. There's no masking it anymore. There's no guessing. Guess what? You feel it, and you feel it with the full force. Now, am I saying that all grains are bad? And dairy? No, I'm not saying that any of those whole foods are bad at all. I'm not going to stand here and make that silly claim. What I am saying is, how do you know unless you do the work? How do you know what's really driving your symptoms if you've never ever given your body a chance to fully heal without them? And you can't. It's just not that simple. This is my approach, and it's actually a gold standard approach. If you go back decades to any clinician, elimination and reintroduction has always been the gold standard. Yeah, we come up with all these fancy tests these days. Oh, I've got a RAS test or I did a blood test. And, that is a shortcut. Don't shortcut it. You can't. Sometimes you have to go slow. I actually coined a term way back, 16 years ago. The body doesn't quick fix, it fixes right. So don't shortcut this. This is my approach. It's how I treated my daughter. It's how I've helped hundreds of women move from an inflamed, exhausted, frustrated state to feeling absolutely amazing. Not by adding more supplements or more medicines in, by actually removing the things that are causing the fire in the first place, letting the body do what it's been designed to do all along, and then heal. Be really intentional about that. Let's go back to basics. Now, I want to just switch back to Maddie for a moment because her story didn't end at the age of 2. We went from gluten-free as a family, her symptoms resolved, and for years things were great. But then, if you're a mum, they hit 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and this is when we start going to parties, sleepovers, school canteens. By the time they're a teenager, well, good luck trying to tell them what to eat. They want what they want. They want what they want to eat, and they want what their friends are eating, and they also want to fit in. And as a mum, as much as I want to control that, I couldn't. And all I could do was keep reminding her every day, keep teaching her, keep showing up when it really mattered. Every chance I got, I reminded her about the poo-poo massage and the 2-year-old tantrums on the toilet because she couldn't go. And you know what? Between the age of 8 and 14, Maddie ate gluten. And look, that's life. That's parenthood. You can't wrap them in cotton wool. You have to let them learn. And learnt she did because over those years, her tummy wasn't great. It wasn't amazing. The symptoms crept back. Her skin, as they get into teenage years, was starting to get terrible. And I kept just dropping those little reminders in. And finally, now she's 16, and for the last year, she's been very religious, gluten-free, dairy-free, all by her own choice. No pressure from me. She understands what gluten has done to her body. And because of it, she knows exactly what she needs to do. She knows how to make her own food. She knows how to stay in the best shape. And she's made this choice for herself. Her tummy issues are resolved. Her skin is amazing. And that's amazing. This is what I want for every woman listening to this. Not just that do what I tell you to do because I'm a naturopath. No, I am not your mother. You have control. You have willpower. But what I want you to understand is what is actually happening in your body. Do it for yourself. That's empowerment. That's informed choice. That's what this whole podcast is about. Now, I want to say something really important here because I know what some of you are thinking. I'm like a mind reader. You're thinking, great, another person telling me I can't eat the things that I love. That's not what this is about. This is not about punishment. This is not about deprivation. I love food. Ask anyone. I genuinely love food and I eat food all day. Guess what? I'm not standing here telling you to be miserable about what is on your plate. What I'm telling you is that food is powerful. It can heal you. It can also harm you. And sometimes the foods you think are healthy are part of that problem. You just have to learn to trust your body and listen to it. Really listen, not to the noise, not to the latest trend, not to what your friend is doing, not to what the internet says to do, but to what your body is actually telling you. The problem is most of us have forgotten how to actually do that. We've been conditioned to push through, to ignore the bloat, to accept the fatigue, to chalk up the headaches, the stress, that we've been completely lost, and out of touch with our bodies for so long. They have been trying to communicate with us and we are blocking it out. And that's where coaching comes in. That's the power of someone in your corner uh, who knows what they're looking at, who can see what your body is telling you and can help you interpret that, especially when you haven't been able to do it on your own. I've been doing this long enough that I can look at what's showing up for you and connect the dots that you might not even thought about. We do this together. That's what makes it work. And I know that you're thinking, okay, Carly, but does this mean I can never eat a croissant again? If you've listened to my podcast before, that croissant is one of my favorite foods. Let me put your mind at ease. If you're not celiac and you don't have an active autoimmune condition or significant gut issues, the occasional exposure to gluten is not going to destroy you. Remember, the research shows that non-celiac individuals, the gluten or the zonulin response is transient. That means your tight junctions open, yes, within actually minutes of gluten hitting your gut lining. But in a healthy person, that response is temporary. So your gut lining is actually one of the fastest regenerating tissues in your body. It turns over every 3 to 7 days. So if you want to cheek a croissant on a Saturday morning and the rest of the week you're eating clean, your gut, well, it's supported and it's going to be in a great state by the end of the week, ready for that other croissant again. Okay, so you're going to be fine. But, and this is the big but, that only works if the rest of the picture is solid. That means you need a healthy, diverse microbiome supporting your gut bacteria and your barrier. And what does that look like? It means you're eating plenty of polyphenol-rich foods, your berries, your green tea, your colored vegetables. It means you're including fermented food regularly, sauerkraut, kimchi, coconut yogurt. It means you're getting adequate fiber from vegetables, not from grains. It means you're hydrated. It means you're managing your stress. It means you're sleeping well. It means you're not constantly assaulting your gut with alcohol, processed foods, packaged foods, and medications that you may or may not need. If all of that is in place, your gut can handle the occasional gluten exposure and bounce back. But here's where it changes. If you're eating gluten twice a day, toast for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, pasta for dinner, your gut is opening and it never gets a chance to fully close and heal. You're in a chronic state of permeability, chronic exposure, chronic inflammation, and that's where the problems start to compound. The migraines, the joint pain, the skin issues, the fatigue, the brain fog, the IBS, the autoimmunity. It's not just one croissant that does that. It's the relentless daily, multiple times a day exposure to your gut simply that it cannot recover. And while we're here, I need to say this because I see it all the time. Going gluten-free does not mean going to the supermarket and filling your trolley with the gluten-free packaged products. No, it doesn't. Because a lot of those products are just as bad as, and sometimes worse, frankly, than the original gluten. They're full of refined starches, gums, fillers, chemicals that have been added to try and replicate the texture of gluten. But you've just swapped one problem for another. They're not healing. That's just a different type of junk. Gluten-free bread that's full of additives and preservatives is not the answer. Gluten-free biscuits loaded with sugar and emulsifiers are not the answer. If you're going to do this properly, let me teach you. In my programs, I make it really simple. I give you recipes for simple cakes, muffins, cookies, snacks, all natural, without gluten or grains, real food, real ingredients. I also have a shopping hack guide that walks you through the best paleo products you can actually buy if you're not up to making paleo bread from scratch, because there are some great options out there. We are spoilt for choice. I remember when I started this journey with Maddie, I bought a Thermomix because I had to make everything myself. I had to do the work. I had to do the research. And now I know so much more. And you have access to so much more as well. But you have to be smart about it. And you have to be discerning. You have to read the labels and you have to do the work. Don't just declare yourself gluten-free and then head to Coles and buy gluten-free bread and think you're sorted. You're not. That's swapping an inflammatory product for a processed one. The whole point of this is if you want to reduce the load on your body, and you can't do that by replacing real food with processed alternatives, you have to put the effort in. Your body is worth it, ladies. Now, if you're already experiencing the symptoms, if you've got bloating, digestive symptoms, skin issues, chronic pain, or any of the things that we've talked about today, then you're likely already in some degree of intestinal permeability that needs to be addressed first. And that's not just by removing gluten, that's about actively healing the gut lining. And there are some beautiful herbs that support this. Things like slippery elm, marshmallow root, aloe vera, licorice root, turmeric, chamomile even. They've all been traditionally used and really well supported in naturopathic practice for gut repair. But I'd strongly encourage you to work with myself or a qualified naturopath to do this gut work properly, because the herbs, they're only one piece. You need someone to look at the whole full picture, work out what's driving gut permeability, and guide you through a protocol that's right for your body. That's what we do. And it makes a huge difference to somebody with issues having an expert in your corner knowing what they're doing. Now, if any of this has resonated with you, if you've been dealing with unexplained symptoms for a long time, if you want to consider trying something very simple before you add anything, before supplements, before medications, before another specialist appointment, just try removing gluten for 4 to 6 weeks. Now, make sure you pay special attention to everything that you're putting in. Even sneaky condiments have gluten in them these days. So really read the back of every single label. Don't go packaged and put crap in. Just remove grains and gluten for 4 to 6 weeks. Pay attention. And when you bring it back in, you'll notice it, if it's going to react to you or not. And if you want support doing that, and if you want someone to walk alongside you, help you navigate this food piece, interpret what your body is telling you, and build a plan that's tailored to you, then reach out to me. Send me a message on Instagram or via the website and let me know where you're at. I'll point you in the right direction for my best starting point, whether that's in one of my programs or within my coaching, because everyone's different and the right entry point depends on you. I'll leave the links in the show notes below, and I'll see you in the next podcast, where we're going to be pulling on this thread a little bit longer, because gluten is just one of the pieces of the puzzle. Thanks for being here. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. And that's a wrap. Phew. If something clicked for you today, I've got all the links to my favourite products, supplements, and exactly where to buy them waiting for you in the show notes. Just head to the show notes for the links to those pages or my website, inner-alchemy.com.au, and let's turn those frustrating symptoms into your comeback story. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you in the next episode.